Chapter 2, Section 2, Biotalk, the importance of heredity and environment. Why do offspring resemble their parents? Genetics, a branch of biology, tries to answer these types of questions about inheritance. Geneticists have found that most aspects of life have a hereditary basis. Many traits can appear in more than one form. A trait is some aspect of an organism that can be described or measured. For example, human beings may have blonde, red, brown, or black hair. They may have tongues that they can roll or not roll. They may have earlobes that are attached or free. The passing of traits from parents to offspring is called heredity. In most organisms, including humans, genetic information is transmitted from one generation to the next by deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. DNA makes up the genes that transmit hereditary traits. Each gene in the body is a DNA section with a full set of instructions. These instructions guide the formation of a particular protein. The different proteins made by the genes direct a body's function and structure throughout life. Chromosomes carry the genes. Let me scroll down a little bit. Chromosomes carry the genes. They provide the genetic link between generations. The number of chromosomes in a cell is characteristic of the species. Some have very few, whereas others may have more than 100. You inherit half of your chromosomes from your mother and the other half from your father. Therefore, your traits are a result of the interactions of the genes of both your parents. The modern science of genetics started with the work of Gregor Mendel. He found that certain factors in a plant cell determine the traits a plant would have. 30 years after his discovery, these factors were given the name genes. Of the traits that Mendel studied, he found that one factor or gene could mask the effect of another. This is the principle of dominance. He called the factor that showed up in the offspring dominant and the factor that was masked recessive. Genotype refers to the genes that an organism contains for a particular trait. The phenotype is the observable traits of an individual. Phenotype is a product of the interaction between the genotype and the environment. One second, I want to see if there's a caption for this. Oh, we read that. Okay. And then I want to read the caption for this, for Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel was the first person to trace the characteristics of successive generations of a living organism. He was an Augustinian monk who taught natural science to high school students. His origins were humble. However, his work was so brilliant that it took many years for the rest of the scientific community to catch up to it. All right, so we were right here. The phenotype is the observable traits of an individual. Phenotype is a product of the interaction between the genotype and the environment. All genes interact with the environment. Sometimes it is difficult to tell how much of a phenotype is determined by heredity and how much is influenced by the environment. A familiar example of how the environment affects the phenotype is the coloring of Siamese cats. The cats have a genotype for dark fur. However, the special proteins or enzymes that produce the dark color work best at low temperatures. That is why Siamese cats have dark markings on their ears, nose, paws, and tail. These are all areas that have a low body temperature. Suppose a Siamese cat's tail were shaved and then kept at a higher than normal temperature. It would soon be covered with light-colored fur. However, these changes are temporary and only present if the environmental conditions are met. There are other examples of the influence of the environment on a phenotype. For a fair-skinned person, exposure to sunlight may produce hair that has, For a fair-skinned person, exposure to sunlight may produce hair that has lightened and a face full of freckles. Primrose plants are red if they are raised at room temperature, but white if they are raised at temperatures about 30 degrees Celsius. Himalayan rabbits are black when raised at low temperatures and white when raised at high temperatures. Here's a Siamese cat, and then we're going to read the description. The Siamese cat is a cat in which color is restricted to the points, meaning nose, ears, legs, and tail. This is known as the Himalayan pattern. This coloration is a result of both hereditary and environmental factors.